Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn has now been officially postponed, cancelled, whatever you want to say. Of course, yesterday it was revealed that Conor Benn tested positive for a banned substance on his VADA test, which obviously caused uproar on social media. Despite that, Matchroom, cancellation, and the powers that be still tried to persist with the fight, but the British Boxing Board of Control stated that they wouldn't sanction it, and here we are, it has been cancelled. Now, this whole saga has been a PR disaster for everybody involved, but in particular DAZN and of course Matchroom. I mean, there are so many questions to ask here, but you know, knowing boxing media, knowing the individuals who interview these promoters, these questions are not going to be asked because, you know, they don't want to risk their press pass, their access to these fighters, to these promoters. This will get swept under the rug, no doubt about it, but there are several interesting talking points surrounding this story. First and foremost, the obvious questions would be, when exactly did Conor Benn test positive with the VADA test? When exactly was it? The date, the time, etc. And how long did it take VADA to notify the teams involved, Eddie Hearn, you know, Team Benn and Team Eubank? And then from there, how long did it take the teams involved to notify the British Boxing Board of Control? That's the first thing I want to know, because, you know, since this has happened, Eddie's came out and said, well, the British Boxing Board of Control don't recognise VADA, they only recognise UKAD, which is true. That is true. But, again, let's go back to another situation in the UK. I believe this was, 2018? When Josh Taylor fought a guy called Ryan Martin. It was the first fight in the World Boxing Super Series for Josh Taylor. And of course, as we know, it came out after that Ryan Martin tested positive for PEDs. Now, this was the scenario that time around. He got a ban from UKAD, by the way. I think it was like a 4-year ban, something like that. But this was the scenario. He failed a test for both VADA and UKAD, and he failed the VADA test first. Now, obviously, all of the relevant parties were made aware of that, and I'm assuming the British Boxing Board of Control were made aware. And guess what happened a couple of days after he failed that VADA test? UKAD then tested him and found the same banned substance in Ryan Martin samples. I think it was something to do with testosterone, something along those lines. So we see right there that VADA and UKAD can coincide and somewhat work together in the UK, because that's what happened with Ryan Martin. However, that wasn't the case here with Conor Benn. Again, we keep on hearing that Conor Benn tested negative for all of his other VADA tests and UKAD tests. But what I would like to ask is, how long after Conor Benn tested positive for his VADA test, how long after that was his next UKAD test? That's what I'm asking, because if they were notified shortly after that positive test, then maybe UKAD could have tested Conor Benn and found the same substance. You know, just like with Ryan Martin, but it appears that that never happened. And there's a lot I want to know. So yeah, when exactly did Conor Benn pop? When were the teams notified? When was the British Boxing Board of Control notified? That's what I would like to know, because it seems like the British Boxing Board of Control knew about this a long time ago as well. And only when it was made public did they pour cold water on the fight and say they did not want to sanction it. That's the only reason that they decided against sanctioning it, because the news broke. That's how it appears, at least. And if this news didn't break, then this fight would have gone ahead. This news was not leaked. Sorry, this news was not revealed by either promoter or either party. It was leaked. So that stands to reason that this fight would have gone ahead if this news wasn't leaked. And again, you guys know my opinions on PEDs at this stage. I don't need to reiterate it. But, you know, if we are to go by the mainstream narrative, the media narrative, that, you know, PEDs are so dangerous and it's, you know, it's detrimental to the sport, then we have to ask serious questions of Eddie Hearn, Kalle Sauerland, and the British Boxing Board of Control. I mean, even now, by the way, Eddie Hearn is pursuing legal action against the British Boxing Board of Control. Bear that in mind. Eddie Hearn is trying to go above the board. So yeah, it's a crazy scenario. But again, and it stands to reason, Eddie Hearn, the whole VADA thing, with Joshua Buatsi and Jean Pascal, as we know, those two were ordered to fight a final eliminator at light heavyweight, a title eliminator. And somebody else won the purse bids, but the fight was going to be held in the UK. And a condition from Eddie Hearn was that VADA had to be involved. Because VADA, according to him, according to his old interviews, was the gold standard for testing. Apparently, according to Eddie Hearn, Jean Pascal wasn't that responsive to signing up to VADA. Hence why Buatsi was pulled out. So now we have Conor Benn testing positive on VADA, and VADA doesn't matter. It's UKAD who we go by. VADA's irrelevant now. Okay? So if VADA's irrelevant, it stands to reason, why would you have VADA on a non-title fight? There's no ranking points here. This is a non-title fight. There's no sanctioning body titles. Why not just stick with UKAD? That's the question I'd like to ask. And again, I'm going to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but my theory is this. I think they used VADA testing as another avenue to further deplete Chris Eubank Jr. through constant blood testing and draining him further. Because Chris Eubank Jr. said in an interview yesterday, I believe, that this was the most tested he's ever been leading up to a fight. And again, bear in mind, this is a non-title fight. This is a non-title fight. It's not for a world title or a sanctioning body title. And this was the most tested he's been, according to him. And he looked like death, by the way, in that interview. He looked drawn, gaunt, you know, no colour in his face. Is that why they implemented the extra drug testing? To drain Chris Eubank Jr. further? Because again, he's cutting more weight, he's got a rehydration clause, and to test him even more on top of that, I can't imagine it's going to be good for him, right? And yeah, cool, Conor Benn's going to have to do more testing as well, but he's not losing anything via cutting weight here. You know, it's not going to affect him as much. So was this an example of weaponized drug testing in the sport of boxing? In my opinion, it is very likely, but obviously somebody on Conor Benn's team got slack, they got lazy, and Conor Benn popped. They tried their best to hide it, they tried their best to continue with this fight, but somebody close obviously leaked this news to the Daily Mail. I think it was either the Daily Mail or the Daily Mirror who broke this news. But yeah, to me, this looks like a case of weaponized drug testing in the sport of boxing. That's just my opinion. But regardless of all of that, this has been a PR disaster for all involved, in particular for The Zone and mainly Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. It's been a disaster. It's been a disaster. Even amongst casual fans on social media, they've been slating Eddie Hearn, and the casual fans, that's Eddie Hearn's bread and butter, is the casual sport fans, not the boxing fans. It's the casuals, and they've been slating Eddie Hearn. To me, this is the biggest PR disaster in his promotional career, and it's a huge blow. It's a huge blow. 2022's not been a good year for Eddie Hearn. And, you know, he needs to steady that ship rather quickly, in my opinion. I mean, what happens from here with Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr.? I think we all know what's going to happen. They will more than likely reschedule this fight. But if I'm Chris Eubank Jr., I would only entertain it if they scrap the rehydration clause and I come in at 160. I would try and use this as leverage. Chris Eubank Jr. right now, surprisingly, has got public support. Chris Eubank Jr. has never really been all that well liked in the UK, but this is as liked as I've ever seen him. So I would use that as leverage, and I would say, if you're going to reschedule this fight, cool, there's going to be new terms though. I'm going to come in at 160 and I'm going to rehydrate. Take it or leave it. That's what I would say if I was Chris Eubank Jr. So I think this fight will be rescheduled. Will there be changes to the weight? We will see. But ideally, if I had my way, Chris Eubank Jr. would continue his career at middleweight and Conor Benn would go down to welterweight where he belongs. That's how I would like it to play out at least. But anyway, share your thoughts below. It's been your guy Delboy. Peace.